There's a new book out called Alienated America, Why Some Places Thrive and Others Collapse. And it was written by Tim Carney, and he is a visiting fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he works on competition, cronyism, civil society, localism, and religion in America. Again, the new book is called Alienated America. Tim, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Glenn.
I want to talk to you about the American dream. The American dream was first really codified, if you will, in a book. I'm trying to remember what it was called, America's Progress or something. And it was during the FDR administration and the New Deal. And that's when the American dream was made into, your own house, et cetera, et cetera. Before that, what was the American dream?
I think Alexis de Tocqueville probably should have come up with that term because he was the one who described it. He wrote Democracy in America, 200 years ago, and he described that what made America so unique and special was the way that we're constantly dividing off and creating lots of little platoons. That was Edmund Burke's term for it. We're always making new associations. We have local governments that have real powers. We're starting little churches, little groups, whether it's sports or civic or an alumni association or a veterans association. Those things are the American dream, the ability to sort of access your neighbors, to connect to people, to get a sense of purpose and your own private safety net almost through these little organizations that you join by choice, but kind of rope you in and you stick to those. That is the American dream. Civil society, not necessarily government and not necessarily individualism, but something in between.
So what's happened to that?
Well, it's eroded for sure, and particularly among the working class and the middle class. So Robert Putnam, who's a liberal sociologist, he wrote a book that was really good back in 2000 called Bowling Alone. A lot of you probably heard of that. And he said, look, Americans aren't connecting as much. And so what I did in Alienated America was I looked at, is that particularly affecting the working class? And sure enough, especially in rural America and parts of suburban America, there's fewer churches. There are fewer organizations bringing people together. More and more people sort of have, they're an individual connected to the government or connected to sort of, their only little platoon, so to speak, are a political party they belong to or something. And so through all sorts of factors, and we should talk about them, technology, government, secularization, people are not as well connected to these little institutions that are so crucial to the good life.
I remember when I was growing up, there was the Moose Lodge and the Elks Club and, the Rotary Club. And my dad was a member of like all of those things. And, you would go to all of these different events and they were all connected to local people and they were your friends and neighbors.
And it's not just, and they're not just nice things. They're really important is what I try to argue here.
What do you mean?
So people who are less connected, who belong to fewer organizations, the data I put throughout the book is there's lower life expectancy. They're less likely to get married, and these women are more likely to have children out of wedlock. Even economically, one of the things I do in Alienated America is I compare Pittsburgh, which is doing pretty well right now, even after the collapse of the steel industry, to parts of rural Pennsylvania, which are not doing very well at all. And I argue that one of the big differences is that Pittsburgh had all these institutions. They had museums and parks and the little neighborhoods. Here's the Italian Catholic neighborhood. Here's Squirrel Hill, the Jewish neighborhood. That allowed people to get through the downtime still with good education. The schools were kept better. People were kept from Skid Row. Marriages were kept together so that when the economy swung back, that was a good place to start up a business. And so you're actually more likely to die of drug overdoses if you live in a place that has fewer of these organizations you're talking about.
So where is the place where the American dream is the healthiest?
It's healthiest in two different types of places. One, it's the elite circles. They practice what we conservatives preach. You go to, I start in the village of Chevy Chase, but that's in Maryland. You go to all sorts of these places where everybody has a college degree, and guess what? They finish school, get a job, get married, have kids, coach Little League, get involved in their kids' schools and all that. But there's only going to be so many of those elite places, right? The more important one are strong church communities. Go to Mormon Utah. Go to Dutch Reform in western Michigan, like Holland, Michigan. I go to a village called Oostburg in Wisconsin. I spent a few days at the diner counter there, and it was just amazing. The biggest complaints people had is at the Christmas concert at the high school, it was too packed because all the neighbors, even the ones without kids in the schools, were there to see this Christmas concert. And what do they find? They have all the good outcomes that the elites have about more marriage, less out-of-wedlock birth, less drug overdose, less college dropout. So that's the most important thing. There's a church on the cover of Alienated America because this is about church is the fundamental institution of civil society in America. And so efforts to drive it out of the public square, which you saw in the Obama administration, that's real. You can't do that and also love the working class and the middle class.